Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Liquidicast. I'm joined by Thomas Euler and Jun Loayza. Did I get that right, Jun?
That is right.
Cool. So Jun has a pretty interesting background, and instead of butchering it myself, I'm going to pass it over to Jun actually, so he can give you his quick intro on who he is and where he comes from and what he does. So Jun, please take it away.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm Jun Loayza. I'm the founder of Metablocks. Our goal is to preserve humanity's most important memories. Before that, I was at Google. Before that, I was at smaller startups, a couple that did exit, which I'm happy about. Wasn't a founder, but was one of the first employees. So at least I got a little chunk there. Before that, I also ran a startup called Reward Me. It was a loyalty platform for restaurants and retailers. On the side, I do run a podcast about fatherhood. It's my goal to become a better father for my children, my two daughters. And that's who I am. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, Jun, as you mentioned, Metablocks, you kind of work in the NFT blockchain space at the moment. So that's what kind of sparked the interest. I think Thomas, you want to have a few words on how you kind of stumbled upon Jun and Metablocks in general.
Well, I read one of your Medium posts, and then I saved the project somewhere in the back of my mind. And then when we were looking for new podcast guests, and I took a closer look at what you're doing at Metablocks, and I found it quite interesting, and said, "Hey, don't you want to hop on? Because indeed, I have a bunch of questions for what you're doing there. But maybe before we deep dive into Metablocks, I'd be curious how, because so apparently you come from a tech background, worked in the tech industry. So when did you and how did you get into the Web3 NFT blockchain space? And from which angle did you get into it? More financially, more because of like DAOs? What hooked you?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So I, like many people, I've previously invested on Ethereum and Bitcoin, like pre-2017. I mean, it wasn't super early, right? But it was still, I think, early enough. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I just thought it was like digital gold. And I'm like, I just went ahead with it. So that was for a few years. Then it dropped, right? In 2017, 2018, I think it dropped, and then it slowly came back up. And then NFTs popped around. I'm like, what are all these funny little characters? What's going on there? Just trying to always stay ahead and learning about what new technologies are popping up. And a few things caught my attention. The first was making it the decentralized ownership so that you're actually the person that owns it. So that's something that was interesting to me. Something that always came to mind for me was, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there are sites where you can buy a constellation or a star and dedicate it to your significant other.
Yeah, funnily enough, I thought about these when I saw Metablocks in some sense.
Yeah. So that was in my mind. I'm like, oh, okay. So now technically you could own it, right? Instead of this website telling you that you own it, it's decentralized. So you could technically, be the figurative owner of that.
At least in some kind of sense, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that was one thing that came into mind. So then continuing that thought, I also thought about collectibles. So, collectibles are huge. There's Pokemon cards, there's basketball cards, baseball cards, and there's so many things that are collectibles that people love to own. So now we can turn this digital assets into collectibles as well. So that was in the back of my mind as well. Okay. So now it's the summer of 2021. And my wife and I watched this movie called Lost in Translation. It's with Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson, and they're in Japan, and they're just having a good time over there. Lost in that city. Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful movie, and it made me very nostalgic to when my wife and I lived in Japan, in Tokyo, in 2015, and I thought to myself, oh, I really wish that we owned a piece of Japan, really. So then again, that was another spark. I was like, oh, I wonder. I can buy real estate in Japan. Not very realistic. It's very difficult. But I wonder if there's something there, something with NFTs or something on the blockchain where I can own a piece of Japan, and it just feels more nostalgic to me. Feels like more ownership. Okay, and then now let's close the loop. This is all where all these bits and pieces of the idea is formulating. And to close the loop, my co-founder Yu-Kai Chow and I have always had this idea of making our virtual selves more productive by doing something, or our virtual selves more meaningful, more productive, more real by having the real world impact this virtual layer. So what do I mean by this? If you're familiar with games like Axie Infinity or something like Decentraland, oftentimes what you do is you create a virtual representation of yourself, or you have a character like in Axie Infinity, and you grind in that game. And you battle and you level up, and then maybe you do it for a year or 2 years, and you've leveled up, you've maxed out your character, and maybe the whole ecosystem moves to a different game, and you've kind of spent all this time and all this energy into this area that now doesn't really translate into your real life. So that was the idea that we've always had in the back of our head. And so we thought, what can we do in real life that would impact your virtual self? And so then this idea of memories, our real life experiences, and adding them to the blockchain started formulating.
And let's get in there. Let's get in there in a minute. But so virtual self to me is like an interesting idea and an interesting concept. And like the way I understood you started from like a avatar in some 3D places standpoint, or is there more to your notion when you use this term that you mean with the concept of like a virtual self?
Yeah, basically, I mean everything from your. A virtual self could be your Instagram profile, it could be your Twitter profile. It's however you choose to represent yourself online. So that's what I mean by the virtual self. And for us, it was really important to hammer on the idea to do something, not just be different to be different, but to improve our real life experience. And so what I mean by this, again, I'll go back to two games that are widely popular, and I wish them the best success, Axie Infinity and Decentraland. What you're doing there and what the game is optimizing for is more of your time spent in the game, less of your time spent in other places. And for us, our idea was spend more time in real life developing amazing experiences and then add that to the blockchain. And in doing so, with Metablocks, you can level up. Like the better your memories, the better your experiences, and the more people enjoy them, the more you can level up. So our concept of Metablocks is quite different. It's spend more time in the real world, have amazing memories, and then add it to the blockchain. So we haven't gotten into the details of how that works yet, right? There's a virtual layer on top of a city, and then you can root your memories on top of that. But that's the general concept. It's about preserving humanity's most important memories, and the way to do that is you root them in the locations of where it happened.
So if your mom or maybe your daughter, one of your daughters for that matter, I don't know their age, comes to you and says, "Hey, Daddy, what are you doing? What is Metablocks? How do you explain this concept to quote unquote regular people?"
Yeah, I would say to her, whenever we do something that's super meaningful and that I want you and Juniper and Kimba, and I want you to remember, they're 4 and 2 years old, what I can do is I can add it to Metablocks. And now it's not on Google Photos, it's not on Dropbox, it's nowhere necessarily centralized that if one day you stop paying for my Dropbox account, you can no longer access it. Or if Dropbox, it's possible, right? Dropbox stops working in 10 years, 20 years, maybe in 3 generations, and then everything is lost. It's basically, you will be able to read and enjoy and look at the memories that I have felt were most impactful in you growing up. And then you can pass that on to your children, my grandchildren, and then the great-grandchildren, the generations beyond it. And all of a sudden you have this family tree or this family history that can never be lost and you can always go back to. I would have loved to learn more about, so my family's from Peru, but my Japanese side of the family immigrated to Peru in the 1900s. And what was that all about? And we have some pictures, but most of them have been lost. So you can think of, photo albums. My mom has a ton of photo albums that I love. I'm sure there's a lot of tools to digitize that. But again, I think preservation and having that forever on the blockchain is very valuable and has a lot of utility.
Yeah, so permanence seems to play a big role for you. But I would like, just for our listeners and also the people watching us on YouTube, so let me try to give a quick summary of really what it feels like, what you do in Metablocks, and what the interface and stuff is, and then you can correct me what I did get wrong. But essentially, there is like currently you started the concept in San Francisco. So essentially, you go to your website. There is a map of San Francisco, and over it there is an overlay of little sectors, some squares, and now I'm able to buy these squares, which are NFTized, right? They are NFTs, these squares, and I can own them. And you have different real estate quality grades, and that is also reflected in NFT pricing. And then once I have a part of the map, then I can, as you explained when we talked before we went on air, you can curate the stuff. So people can go, they can upload media, but I select what is public at this specific location. So for instance, let's say I would own the square where my house is rooted in, and I want to be the person curating what is attached, which photos. I don't know. Probably you will one day also venture into video and stuff, and then I can curate what is really in the digital space, call it the metaverse, maybe the memories, the pictures associated to this specific real world location. Is that like a good summary? Did I miss an important aspect?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary, and I'll add to that. So you mentioned the concept of a memory curator, and we talked about this a little bit beforehand, but I think it's important for the audience to understand. If you, for example, San Francisco will be our first city, then the question is, if I don't have memories in San Francisco, why should I even own a blocks, which is the blocks is not an address, it's an entire like city block. It's an area. Why should I own it if I don't have memories in San Francisco? Well, the idea is simple. When you own a blocks, you become a memory curator. You're not, and I would, the parallel is a museum curator. When you are the museum curator, you don't necessarily put up your own artwork in the museum. What you do is you get artwork from many different artists, you source them, and then you choose the aesthetic, what gets put on the wall, where, what is the style and the theme of that museum. And in the same way as the memory curator, you can accept or reject memories from people from all over the world. So there's a lot of that is like the prestige or the status that you have for owning this blocks. And now extended to that is if you own landmarks, for example, the Golden Gate Bridge or Golden Gate Park, these are the Ferry Building here in San Francisco. These are the places with the most memories, likely even the most meaningful memories. So you will be the one who gets to curate it. And we're talking about, down the road using augmented reality. Our vision is a world where you travel to a city, and of course you get to experience and meet the people and eat drink some coffee at the coffee shop, see the street art. Of course you want to do that. But in addition, I think it would be amazing if you could go to these cities and experience those memories of the people that have lived there.
Sure.
See the images, watch the videos, read the text.
So I mean, one natural question. So if I go today on Google Maps and I review a place, then there will be tons of photos, and I can upload photos and add them to a place. So that is certainly, like, just from a product and experience standpoint, something that exists. But you introduced this notion of curation on top of it, which may have some I can see some upside, some downside for this, but how do you, in your mind, imagine this curation unfolding? Do you think it will be at some point regular people who just do this, or do you think it's more something that almost could turn into something professional, where people try to own a lot of digital, real world based real estate and represent it? What is your vision on that side?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe this would be in the three player types that we see are going to happen. The first one is the nostalgic neighbor, and this is a regular person like me that's reminiscing about Tokyo, and I just really want to own that area where it's called Cafe Hato. where my wife and I used to go drink some coffee, add some memories there. And then in the future, we pass that down generation to generation. And my grandchildren, they look and they say, oh, my grandparents had this memory here. Let's go recreate that memory, let's say, for example, and add it to the blockchain as well. So that's one. That's basic. Everyone can do that. Okay. And I don't even have to own the blocks necessarily, right? I can just add my memories. I don't even have to pay money to own the blocks. I would just add the memories to the blocks. The second one is what we described as the museum curator, right? So this is the person that really values that area, that city. For example, here in San Francisco, the Mission, very, very wonderful culture here in the Mission. You can own that whole block, and then you get to decide what are the memories remembered in that area, right? So you start collecting these areas, and like you said, you take a lot of pride in figuring out which of these memories you want to accept or reject. Okay, and then the last one is what we call the real estate mogul. So this person doesn't necessarily want to curate the memories, but this person wants to buy a lot of blocks because when you do that, when you do that, you start generating a lot of meta rent. We haven't talked about the currency yet, but you start generating a lot of meta rent. And when you generate a lot of meta rent, now you can bid for the landmarks. And if they win the landmarks, now they have something that's very valuable. So they could resell it on the open market, or they can, I actually envision people hiring memory curators to curate their landmarks or their most valuable pieces of virtual land, and so that they have very valuable memories, and then you resell that. So basically, if you're a real estate mogul, you care less about the nostalgia and more about how can I get my NFT to become more valuable. And how does an NFT become valuable? Like, why are people buying apes? Why are people buying lions? This artwork, there's two factors to it. One is who's the artist and what's the community behind it. But ultimately, it's that artwork and the community that determine the value. Is it popular? Here, it's how valuable is that memory? Like, what do people think about the memories? And the memories can come from people from all over the world. So I think in the end state, your question, Thomas, is I see real estate moguls hiring memory curators to get popular influencers or creators to add their memories to these blocks. So you can imagine if somebody has 1 million followers on Instagram and they add their memories to that blocks, then all of a sudden that blocks becomes valuable because 1 million people follow this person and it becomes a collectible. So I think that's how it ends up growing and the value of the NFT increases.
I think there's like something that you keep mentioning. It's like this idea of nostalgia. I think it's like a very powerful baseline to start a project in the blockchain space. I guess my question for you is like, have you guys encountered any I mean, as you know, the blockchain space can be scummy. There's rug pulls. There's people looking to make a quick dollar. And I've noticed like quickly, I joined your guys' Discord. You see that the community is different. You see that people, it's more welcoming, it's more warm, it's more helpful. And I think it's because you guys have this like cultural pathos or like this company pathos of like nostalgia and like creating memories and creating experiences together, like in the real world. I guess my question is like, was this planned? How did you guys navigate this? Like, did you see maybe that's not the case. Maybe there's a little bit of turmoil or some of that stuff is starting to creep in. But like, I don't know, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So was it planned? I would say yes. From the inception, like I mentioned, we wanted to be different. So that meant no artwork for our NFT. It's the memory. It's not the artwork that provides value. So it's only memories, no art. Second, for our Discord, we wanted to definitely be different and stand out to a specific demographic that values the memories and nostalgia. So what we wanted to validate from the very beginning was, as you mentioned in crypto, or even in these Discords, a lot of people don't really represent their true selves. Like even in their usernames, it's rarely their real names.
Yeah.
And what ends up the risk then is, well, if that's the case, if people have this virtual self, will people actually share their real life memories and add them to the blockchain and add these in the community? So that was a question mark. People, of course, do it on Instagram and TikTok, but will they do it on something more Web3? And the answer is a resounding yes. So we're very happy about this. So we have a memories channel. And every weekend, for example, there's a challenge. Go out there and make some meaningful memories. And you see people sharing their memories. Sometimes it's not a picture of themselves. Sometimes just of what they did or what they ate. But they're definitely sharing. And then, for example, today, in particular, the challenge was talk about somebody who has made an important impact on your life. And if you see the memories channel today, they're sharing a memory with a person and talking about why it's meaningful to them. So I think that's why you see something that's quite different than many other Discords. Also, we surveyed and we looked at the demographic. Most are millennials, so primarily above 25 years of age, definitely above 30 years of age. Many are parents. We surveyed them. Definitely over 70% have some kind of crypto, so Bitcoin or Ethereum are the most popular. But less than 40% own an NFT already. I think it's even less. And so what I think we're introducing is NFTs for a broader audience. Again, our Discord is still growing. It's still in the inception phases. So definitely check it out. But you'll see that there's a lot of community. There's a lot of conversations. And nothing really revolves around going to the moon or when's the token hitting exchanges or how much can I exchange the NFT.
When Lambo.
Yeah, when do we Lamb? Yeah. No, it's that isn't mentioned at all. And you'll see that the conversations are more... I think trying to help each other out. There's different community channels like about parenting, about investing, about food, about health and fitness. I mean, so we try to make it that community. Mm-hmm.
There is a thing that I like talking about when I, especially when I talk to people who just, I don't know, superficially know something about NFT because it's been such a media story. And I mean, we are currently still at the point where everything that is built using non-fungible tokens, we call an NFT. And I'm definitely of the opinion that at some point we will just build cool products and experiences and they use NFTs, but we will give it, like we say, I write an email, not I do something where I use SMTP and POP3 or IMAP or something. That is just stuff under the hood. And I guess we need to get there. The NFT space needs to get there, and it's moving in this direction. Now, I mean, let's not kid anybody. I guess as founders, we are currently incentivized to also use the hype of NFTs and it's hip. And so we say, hey, it's an NFT. And that is certainly going on. I mean, we definitely do it. I assume you also. But in the end, the product, the experience cannot be necessarily NFT forward if you try to build something for like a broader audience, as you were also hinting to that you are interested in. And now what I see is, okay, a lot of the high profile stuff in the NFT world comes from the art world. And then, I mean, we are in the sports world. There is a fair amount of like NBA Top Shot because like the collectibles in sports are so important. That also exists. But mostly if you open OpenSea nowadays in your browser, then what you're going to see is mostly stuff that is somewhat related to art. But then, I mean, everything you said in the way, like I like phrasing it is, look, if you can create digital objects that you can transfer, but you cannot copy them, and you can give really ownership to people, at least in a technical, if maybe not in a legal sense, then that is quite interesting as a proposition, and it's really something new. And now we see, and that is what I found really interesting about Metablocks, because really you think about like building a product, an experience that is not an art piece or just a media asset and an NFT, and you try to sell it on a marketplace. And besides what you are doing, what are some of the developments you see that interest you? Where do you see NFT projects that are kind of like cutting edge and doing not the stuff everybody is currently doing?
Yeah, I would say the things that interest me the most revolve right now around the collectible space. I think that, of course, people are already trying to harness that. You can own one of the 10,000 set. Fine. Mm-hmm. But that collectible. So the thing is, we're trying to work backwards, right? So many of the artwork is here, own the 10,000, and then we're going to give you access to a Discord or access to this, and you're trying to fill it with some kind of value. I think it has to be the most interesting things to me is you're starting with the value. Right. So again, I go back to these creators or these influencers that have millions of followers, and they should have their own collectible that they can then monetize and use for some kind of exclusive access. Right. If you own one of these collectible items, then you get a one-on-one call with me. whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that is is where I'm interested as the starting piece. It's that collectible side. Of course, gamifying it. I mean, gamifying it comes so naturally in this space. Any particular projects that come to mind? Not particularly. Learning more about what you guys are doing, I find that super interesting, and that's why I want to explore ways on working together, because I think there's a lot of opportunity in this space. But if anybody's doing anything with local, I would love to talk to them. So anything with local businesses and helping them stand out in some way in Web3, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and partnering with Metablocks as well.
Yeah, I mean that is like we could go back a bit to your project and stuff you're doing, because I mean, if you just see it on first sight as somebody who is probably not really deep in tech, it might sound a bit like I don't get it. But then of course there is opportunity. I get you probably came across the term of like token curated registries. That was something that was a bit hip and quite a technical jargon for essentially let people use tokens they own to create lists and order lists and preferences. And that is something, for instance, like, right, if there is like a digital representation of a physical space, and then in this there is somebody curating it. I mean, one question of course could be like, does it make sense to have like these hard gatekeeper individuals, or does it make sense to give them also a toolkit to open it up to like a community of curators? And then some concept like this would be very interesting, and suddenly you could have a mechanism to create really quality. I mean, so much on the web is about discovery, right? And like, of course, in some sense, if I want to learn something about a place on a map, I can go to Google Maps, but Google Maps gives me what Google Maps gives me, which is very often images that are related to businesses and so on. But if I want something different, maybe something that feels more local and authentic, or maybe just artsy, I don't know, that's going to emerge. We will see who is picking up your solution. I found it interesting that you said you called your users players. So even though it's not strictly speaking a game, you called neighbors.
Neighbors.
Then I misunderstood. Okay, yeah, but well, so right, who is going to adopt this and become a neighbor? But it's definitely very interesting, because I've never seen somebody combining NFT and geodata or the physical world. In this
I think there's
context.
So much opportunity going down that space. I think there's also opportunity just diving deeper into memories, right? So we can do time capsules, right? You will only be able to see this memory in 10 years, for example. Private memories, you can only see this memory if you own the blocks. There's a lot of different things that we can do there, because we believe memories are powerful and they need to be preserved. So there's a lot of different aspects that we can go that avenue as well.
I personally think that's one of like the bigger elements of NFTs. Like everything seems to come full circle back to this like accessibility thing, right? Where it's like, if you own X asset, you get access to this exclusive community. Yeah. And I think it's not just really access, but it's also kind of like affiliation. I recently wrote a blog post where it's like, what makes an NFT valuable? And I think, people want to see that credible or high status people are affiliated with the project. They want to have this feeling of exclusivity, and then they want to also show off the fact that they have something expensive. They want to flex or something like that. And I think, NFTs are the perfect instrument for that. And as you mentioned to us, Jun, like before we started going live, like nostalgia and real utility of a project, I think that's where it's headed. Like you said, people don't want to just collect, number 3,000 of 35,000, of a collection. And I think you guys, we're trying to attach utility, attach an experience to the technology. And yeah, I mean, exclusivity and access, it seems to always come back to that, where there's so much you could do. Like we've talked about it in previous podcasts. Like if you're a fitness coach and you say, whoever has the gold tier NFTs, whatever you want to call them, like they get personal coaching, like a personal Zoom call with me or something like that. Yeah. And like there's a lot of creative stuff you could do with that. Definitely.
I love that. I there's a lot of potential there, and it's different, right? So why can't you just do that right now with Stripe or something like some Stripe integration, and then you give somebody like pay $100 and then you get lifetime membership with me for personal coaching. So I think that's interesting that can exist now. But if you own it, like you said,
You can
it opens up.
then.
Exactly. It opens up the possibility. You can transfer it. You can rent it. You can dissect it, I guess, right? Yep. You could break it apart possibly. So there's a lot of opportunities there. So absolutely, I'm really excited about what happens in the future with that. I mean, I guess the question always comes back to: is that better? Is that ideal for the fitness instructor? Like, do they care that it is transferable?
Maybe not.
I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Ron developed. Yeah. So Ron wrote a blog post. Essentially, I told him afterwards, it's a good post, but you almost wrote it from the wrong point of view, because he thought about like New Year's resolutions and how you could turn these into NFTs. It was a bit playful, but also interesting. But I thought if you turn this around, you could say like, an example, you're a coach, stay with this, and then you know that at any given point in time you can coach 8 people. That is the time you have available, so you slice it into 8 time slots, and you represent these in the form of an NFT which you sell. And now
it's like time as an NFT.
Yeah, it's like so and what could be an interesting spin, but like you say, maybe it's not the best case. Depends a bit on how your career goes. So if I can buy this NFT, so I can get your coaching. So if I am successful, then people will see, they want to ask who is the coach, but I own 1/8 of his time. So now at this point, I have it and I can sell it. Now, of course, the coach needs to pay bills as well. So and if he's just an upstart, maybe the first price for the NFT is not so high. It's like a 8-week course or whatnot. And then I sell it. So, but now if he can take on every additional sell a cut,
royalty,
that would be interesting. Like a royalty. Yeah. Then it would be interesting to monetize in this way if you really become successful, right? If you could have this from a super high level coach that is super popular, then it would be cool. Of course, if you're the coach and you don't manage to go on this trajectory, maybe you prefer getting your hourly wage.
But Thomas, you're forgetting just one other aspect of that case study or that use case, was that there's like this embedded incentive, right? So when you have ownership to this NFT, you're now a part of this like exclusive community, as I mentioned, but there's like embedded incentive milestones you have to reach. Otherwise, like your NFT maybe gets less valuable or gets automatically transferred to the next person on the leaderboard or something, where you're turning like a New Year's resolution into like a NFT leaderboard or something like that. That was just like one little idea, like down a path you can go. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you said, Jun, like why can't they just do that with like a subscription or with like a one-time payment? I don't know. I think the transactional history.
That's the thing, right? Why not Web 2? Why Web 3? I think it always goes back to that question. Right now, there's a lot of hype around Web 3, so you can monetize, and that's why there's so much energy, so much action going on there. But what happens when the dust settles? So, right, ultimately, and I'll talk about Metablocks. Ultimately, Metablocks is valuable in and of itself because you can preserve your memories, and so you can pass that on to generations. It is not dependent on access or exclusivity or us trying to hype up our Discord and then creating a private channel that's saying only you can access it. Is if nothing else, if there's no Discord, if there's nothing, the product still functions. I think in the long run, those are the projects that you are going to see last beyond any crypto winter, NFT winter, whatever may be coming. And same thing, Axie Infinity, Decentraland, I keep talking about those, but those are a game in and of itself. And as long as they provide that enjoyability, then it'll continue running. NFTs that are just about, I'm going to sell you 10,000 and I have to hype this up enough so that people believe it's valuable. And then I have to create some kind of a private area so that people get access. I think those is not sustainable. You can only build so many of them, but ultimately, once people move on to the next thing, like what ultimately is valuable in and of itself. It's just, hey, I also own this NFT part of 10,000 people, but then what next? What do I do with that? So I would look back to any of these projects, really think Web 2 versus Web 3, can it stand alone? Like, are you selling it just because it has the Web 3 name, or does it need to be decentralized? Or does it, do I need to have this ownership? What is the ultimate value that's being derived from it?
Sure. Or I mean, you could also look at it from like a bit. So what does this technology stack enable that I couldn't be doing before in a useful way? Because I think both, like for you, the notion of permanence is super important, and I think that is something where, of course, like Web3, if you include something like decentralized file storage, I think you're using IPFS as you mentioned. So that is one notion in there, and I also think there are some different angles. I think just like you said, collectibles. Like for instance, one thing that we are quite interested in and trying to enable with what we are building is to make it possible to have NFT, but not NFTs, but like collectibles, make it very easy for you to create your own collectibles and sell them at very low price points. And even if you want to do 10,000, to create interesting digital experiences. I mean, we are always focused on either individuals, call them creators maybe, or brands who have a fan base, right? So they already do something that is not just creating NFTs, but they do something that people are interested in. And now giving them the toolkit to create collectibles, like you mentioned before, right, where you said, hey, why shouldn't a creator have a own collectible? I think that is something we see in the physical old world, a lot of comparisons, right? Like for instance, people today, they buy a lot of limited edition vinyl when it comes to music. Yes. So of course you can listen to the same song on Spotify, or you can buy the CD, but no, people want the vinyl because it's a collector object. And I think that is also something that we were missing in the digital world, because just even if it's just emotionally, if it's like a sleight of hand that the NFT world introduces, but yes, I can download the JPEG, but it's just not the same, right? It's just not the same as owning it. It's also not the same as like supporting the artist or the creator that I like, and that is also like one part of the places where I think that is really interesting about what the Web3 movement is doing together with interoperability. That is something I would hope. I mean, now we hear the stories about Facebook or Meta nowadays entering the space, and let's see how they do it. We were in one of our last episodes discussing or guessing whether it would be like adopting these open standards and the interoperable layer that is already there, or if they would go and do something more in line with how Facebook at least used to operate. I mean, when it comes to the metaverse stuff, Zuckerberg, of course, is on the record and says, no, it will be more open and interoperability is important. So let's see.
He's recently mentioned it in a podcast, I think the Lex Fridman podcast. He recently mentioned that like an open world interoperable environment is what's preferable.
Yeah, and if that comes, I mean, then everything becomes so powerful, especially at like the intersection between everything. Like it's so fluent for individuals nowadays, the digital world and the real world, right? If you are probably, I don't know what age you are, probably we're roughly the same age, and then we still grew up not like fully digital native maybe, and the smartphone came later in our life. But the newer generations, for them, if you grew up with this in your hand, then there is just you don't differentiate in the same way between that's digital, that's analog. Maybe you can say from the experience with your kids how that is just merging into one. That's our world experience.
For sure. No, for sure. So I think it's important to talk a little bit about this. To date myself, the iPhone came out when I graduated college. So even in college, I had my flip phone and I was like texting people. I was trying to look up people on Facebook. It was just like one little image. I was like, oh, I met this girl on campus. Like, is that her? I can't even tell.
Which pixel?
Which pixel? I can't even tell. It's and now people have Tinder on campuses. That must be insane. Anyways, that's like a separate topic. I just can't imagine what life must be like now. Okay, so we're talking about metaverse and what's going to happen
And
there.
that NFTs would
interoperability.
also be interesting, by the way, but go ahead.
No, for sure. And I think about my daughters, right? And maybe it's just my oldness talking. And every person of the latter generation always feels like this. But I am worried that with the metaverse and this, you're putting on your headset and I'm sure you guys have either read or seen Ready Player One, that we're basically now going towards that path of spending more time in the virtual world as opposed to in the real world. And Metablocks, really, the goal is different. We want you to spend more time in the real world creating really wonderful memories and then putting that on the blockchain and that can level you up, right? So it's the opposite. And I listened to bits of that podcast as well with Mark Zuckerberg on the Lex Friedman podcast. Mm-hmm. And he talked a little bit about, Mark said he doesn't see people spending more time in it as opposed to now spending less time on their phone and transferring that time equally onto the metaverse. I don't think it would really play out that way. Our time on our phone has increased tremendously, I believe, right? Every year that passes, whether it's on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, the more and more we release these more addictive type of mediums, the more time we're spending on our phones, for sure. And so I think if we have something... Mm-hmm.
That's their algorithm, isn't it? It's like, how can we keep these people scrolling as long as possible?
For sure. So you can imagine in the virtual world, now the goal is how can we keep you in the virtual world longer, right? I mean... I don't know. Yeah, you can imagine.
I agree with you, man. Yeah. I don't think Mark's optimistic utopian view of the future mm-hmm. of digital. I mean, if you were to ask Elon Musk, he said he thinks we're already in a simulation.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, you can imagine you guys know OnlyFans, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
So right, it's
Thomas knows it all. No, I'm kidding.
Thomas knows it too well.
That's a callback.
You can imagine. Right, what is that causing? It's causing young people to all of a sudden, right? You guys know this. There's a big culture there or traffic there that is pornography or nude. So now all of a sudden, I'm just a girl or a dude. I don't know, and I could either work minimum wage or I can put up these create a following.
Be an OG. Be like a great personality in the metaverse.
Yeah. And I could sell myself in that manner. Well, first of all, I want to say I'm not here to judge. You do what you're going to do. But I'm just saying now in the metaverse, like imagine the possibilities to make money and all these things, which is definitely good. The education is possible there. At the same time, you're spending so much time there. I think you're spending less time with your friends in real life, less time interacting in real life. And I do think that's very important. But that's where we're headed. So let's do it. Let's go there. And I hope that we also retain these aspects of our real life that can be represented in the real world. And I hope Metablocks is positioned to be that part of it.
I mean, in a really abstract sense, so what we used to have, just from a business model standpoint, and what the Web 2.0 economy as a whole is based on. I mean, all there we have is subscriptions, right? And subscriptions, they are made for. So from a creator's perspective, it's about like abundant creation, right? If you can keep creating output, then you can at some point sell subscriptions. And on the other hand, like you want to really hook people to your product, right? Like Ron said, there are these algorithms and digital products really optimized to get people hooked. Now, what you're doing, like if that is also how value is created, how value is constructed, then I believe you need to build these products. In a statement like yours, we want people to spend more time in the outside world than a VC from following the Web 2.0 paradigm. What they would be saying is, okay, but goodbye. Why would you do this? But and that is interesting. Like Web 3 and the whether you talk tokens, NFTs, suddenly you introduce the notion of scarcity to the digital realm, and in some sense, it's really cool about the internet that we have have abundance, but also we see that like time now is the scarce resource. And there have been interesting projects like BAT, Basic Attention Token, is like something that comes to mind, but they really want to shift the paradigm. And if you build different products based on a different paradigm, but also give a business model that is in tune with this, then suddenly you can probably create better products that are not so exploitive, manipulative, and creating these dopamine how do you say it out? Spilling it out? I don't know. I just know the German word.
Faucets.
And yeah, thank you. Engines, and you don't have to do this anymore. So that is where like the rosy view into the Web3 future could be better projects that are and a better digital environment made for humans. Now there is so much pressure and so many strings being pulled in the background. We all know this if you've spent a bit of time in crypto and so on, but still.
So I wonder, as you were talking, I was thinking about, I wonder if right now there are game mechanics to get you to spend more time in the virtual world to level up, right? So there are these game mechanics. I wonder if in this future state, if there needs to be game mechanics in real life to get you to spend more time in real life. And this thought just came to me. Like imagine going to Australia to bungee jump. And when you complete your bungee jump, you get a token that signifies that you bungee jumped, and then you add that to your avatar. And now all of a sudden, whether it's access or whatever, or just showing it off, like you're flexing, you mentioned that. It's like, hey, this person like does stuff in real life. Oh yeah, man, I went and I bungee jumped, and then I also whitewater rafted, and I also went to the Lakers game the other week. And it's basically you gamify your. I'm not saying we need to do this. I'm just saying.
No,
imagine,
I think we need to do this.
Yeah.
I think we need to do this. I was recently talking to a guy who has like a company producing luxury fashion, and his daughter bought a $6,000 digital handbag, and he couldn't believe it because he said, "Why would you do it?" But she said, "Yeah, look, if I buy the LV, the Louis Vuitton, I also want to show it off to my people, but my friends, they are everywhere around the globe. I don't see them. So what would I do with like a physical handbag? I need it in a digital way." And so especially if all the metaverse visions of the big and small tech guys come to fruition, which I think I am kind of bullish on, whether that's good or not, but we will more and more of our lives have like also digital representation. And if that is the case, then taking the real world stuff into something you can brag about in the digital native way, that is also something that we will need. And I mean, I don't think that people will stop doing stuff in the real world, but connecting it in clever ways and having this, I guess, maybe it's a good idea if we want people to go outside.
I will say, Jun, just to answer your rhetorical question, I think we do need that type of gamification in our real lives. I mean, earlier you said like we'll be spending more time online than we are offline, and I just had this like shame wash over me because I'm like, well, fuck, I already spend more time in the I need like someone to put a carrot, on a stick in front of me and say, hey, you lazy ass, like get out of the house. Go bungee jump. I don't know where I would do that here in Germany, but I think that's the next iteration of like physical experiences. Why not?
For sure. I felt that too. So, iOS has this new thing that tells you how much time you spent on your phone. I actually thought I don't spend that much time. And then all of a sudden it comes back and be like, you're spending 6 hours a day on your phone. I'm like, 6 hours a day on my phone? That's insane. Yeah. And I mean, whether it's normal or not, whether I want to cut it down or not, I think that was like a heads up, a realization to me. I'm like, whoa, I spend a lot. I mean, and that's not even counting the time I'm staring at my computer, either working or doing other things. So it's
I add all of that. I mean, we're a remote company, so that's 8 hours.
That's true.
Watch an episode of Netflix after work, have dinner. I'm on my phone while we're sitting on the couch or something. Like, dude, it adds up and it's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, to be fair, it has like replaced all kinds of media that we've been using before. I mean, you don't watch TV anymore, you don't read books anymore, you don't read magazines anymore. So I guess you would have to combine all the media that have been converged into your smartphone. But yeah, still, I mean, we are doing all
Thomas,
of this. Yes.
All they have to do is turn books into NFTs and people will start reading again.
Let's do it.
Make it sexy.
Hey Jun, I think we're coming to an end, but I would still like to tackle one area, like on a you're starting your own project, maybe even company. I don't know if you incorporate it or if you do it like fully decentralized, but whatever way you're doing it, you're founding something, getting it going in the crypto Web3 and NFT space, and this I would like to briefly tackle at least. How has your experience been in doing so, and what have been so far the biggest successes, but also the things that you found the most difficult or surprising?
Yeah, I would say this is the first time I'm doing something in the consumer-facing realm. Previously, I've done startups in more SaaS, software as a service, and I love it. And it's so enjoyable to me. I should have done this years ago. I love the community that we're building. So far, it's been absolutely so enjoyable. I love putting out the product, and you immediately get feedback from all these users. And you've heard this, I'm sure, time and time again, but the Web3 community is very supportive. So when you're entering a market and you're trying to, many people will say this, a startup is kind of like surfing. If you go too early, you'll miss the wave. If you go too late, you'll miss the wave. So it has to be, that timing is so important. So, whether we're early or late, and it still feels early, you want to catch that wave, and that momentum that your community will provide is so wonderful, inspiring, and it definitely gives you that momentum and that energy to continue working, especially when startups are hard. Startups are very, you guys know this. You guys have your own startup. It's very, very hard. So I would say, to your question, it's been absolutely wonderful, motivating, and I see myself really, doing this for many, many, many years and continue to try to push Metablocks and trying to figure it out. So far, we have good momentum, but of course, we're going to hit roadblocks. So, I would say then, if I were to bundle it down to one word or one keyword, it would be the community has really stood out. And it's stated online, but I think it can't be overstated. It really is a really nice community out there.
Yeah, that is to me really interesting. Like how all these projects in this area are really community driven. Something that, anyways, everything we see on the internet, right? If you do it well, you're good at community building and maintaining. But we had like a generation of startups still built with the industrial age model of organizing. And now, even if you don't do it like in the fully decentralized DAO, there are just these legal barriers to doing this in a clean sense. So maybe you still need some kind of real world entities that can sign contracts and so on. But even given however way you structure it in detail, what is so interesting is you have just people coming together around a cause, and then you have so much open source ethos and even open source code in this space. And it's really, it's like the value creation made for and also from the digital world. And that is like the beautiful side of it, I find. Like yes, there are downsides to our digital lives and so on, but it's also, never before you can have the weirdest obsession, like NFTs, for instance, right? And now suddenly here's a guy in Germany talking to someone in San Francisco. And
I will add one thing, and this will be the last thing. I do need to go after this. And this has been very wonderful. So something that has surprised me, coming originally from Web 2, is that the community and the people are so understanding of you not having a finished product. Everyone talks about having an MVP, a minimal viable product, but in this, you don't even need it. Like, the community in many aspects is the product in itself. And if you go to metablocks.co right now, you'll see, compared to many other projects that I've seen, we're very far ahead. We have the product, we're close to minting the project, and you'll actually be able to add memories and put them on the blockchain. Like, this product is happening within 6 months of starting. But even before that, like, the users or the people are so understanding and willing to just either throw money or be part of just an idea, even if you don't even have anything to show yet. So for any entrepreneurs listening, absolutely, if you're starting in Web3 or in this NFT space, the idea will take you very far. The white paper can take you very far. The community will take you very far. And I've seen that they're just more patient and understanding, and just want to make sure that you're honest and truthful and you're making progress, but they will be more patient and wait for that product.
Cool.
Yeah,
Jun, it was a pleasure. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's the quintessential place to build in public, as you mentioned, Jun.
Yes.
And I think you guys are doing a great job. Jun, thanks so much for joining us, man. It was a great episode. We'll throw your social handles on the show notes. We'll put the links to your website, to Metablocks and stuff like that. And yeah, man, thanks for joining us.
Cool.
Thank you so much. And if you enjoyed it, 5 stars, 5 stars.
Yeah, give it a rating if you liked it. All right.